Two shots rang out on a deserted road at night. In the morning, a hunter looking for a place to ambush came across the body. The woman was lying face down, almost completely naked. A plastic bag was tied tightly around her head. The bullet had penetrated her skull almost through. There were tire tracks all around. It appeared she had simply been thrown away like a garbage bag. The police will find out that this is not the first and far from the last victim. Over the next few months, many more bodies will be found on this land, and all of them are women, sex workers who have disappeared after going out to earn some money. The police understand that a serial killer has started in Spokane, but no one even remotely imagines that this is a person whom everyone knows, whom they respect, whom they call a model citizen. Mid-90s. The X-Files, Beverly Hills, and Bailiffs are on TV. Nirvana hits are playing on cassette players. Life was slower, simpler, and seemingly calmer. While everyone was dancing to Michael Jackson and watching Friends, women were disappearing one by one in the city of Spokane. And not by chance, they were women associated with the city's nightlife. East Barhaven Street is known for being a gathering place for sex workers and drug addicts who go out in search of money for a fix. They are actually performing the job duties of prostitutes. Every now and then a car stops there. The driver just sits and watches. He chooses his victim, but he is not interested in her services. He is not a client. He is a hunter looking for prey. The first disappearances attracted almost no attention. In those days, unfortunately, the disappearance of the so-called moths was not perceived as an extraordinary event. But since the fall of 1997, bodies have been found one after another. 6 women were murdered in a few months, 5 in Spokane itself, another in a neighboring city. All the victims were women associated with the street, drugs and prostitution. All were shot. It became clear a serial killer was operating in the city. Spokane is a small American city. At the time of the events described in this story, less than 200,000 people lived there. Therefore, it is not surprising that the appearance of a serial killer for small Spokane was a real shock. The local newspaper comes out with alarming headlines: "Serial Killer in Spokane." The police create a special investigative team, but there are few concrete leads. Relatives of missing people, not only the killer's victims, but also in general, are raising the alarm. Every week, there is news about a new missing woman or a found body. So, in November 1997, 39-year-old Sean McLennan disappeared. The last place he was seen alive was the same East Barhaven Street. Interestingly, in December, her sister received a letter. Sean apologized for her lifestyle, promised to get treatment for drug addiction, and wrote,
"I love you, and I'm still alive."
This is very eerie, considering that already on Christmas Eve, her body with a gunshot wound to the head was found near an abandoned gravel pit outside the city. A plastic bag was tied tightly around her head. The bodies of Lori Wesen and Sean McLennan were found buried together on 14th Street. The day after Christmas, the body was simply thrown into the trash, like junk. It was the same body that the hunter found.
"My sister is not trash. She has a family that loves her,"
her sister said. But to the killer, neither Sean nor the other women were human, just another prey. Despite a series of disappearances and murders, despite the fear that is spreading throughout the city, to put it mildly, many women still go out into the streets in search of a living. I'm talking about sex workers. Even under the threat of death, nightlife does not freeze. And this is quite strange, but it shows that poverty and drug addiction can drive a person into a corner where a killer can wait for them. The funny thing is that most of them didn't even have pepper spray. Imagine, volunteers and wives appeared in the city, who bought these sprays at their own expense and distributed them to the girls on Eastbury Street. It didn't help the bodies were found one after another. Almost all the victims were dumped in wastelands, in ravines, or among the bushes outside the city. The serial killer, as you noticed, didn't bother much to get rid of the body. He threw it out in the open, that's all. But not always. Several victims were buried, although not in deep graves. He covered some other bodies with branches or old junk, like Sean McLennan, who was essentially found in a landfill. Each time a new body was found, it became clear that it was the work of one person, or a group of people who killed according to a similar script. The police kept many details secret so as not to scare the criminal. But something leaked to the press. First, the method of murder. 22 caliber bullets. Most of the victims were shot in the head or chest, presumably at close range. Second, the post-mortem rituals. Some of the women had plastic bags tied around their necks and placed over their heads. Yes, he was clinging to these bags after death. Why? Police assumed that the bags were used to stop the bleeding and keep the killer's car from getting dirty. The press later dubbed the unknown perpetrator the grocery bag killer.
Other gruesome details also leaked. One of the victims, 38-year-old sex worker Shannon Jelinski, was found naked, covered only by an old, dirty mattress pad. Another, the sixth victim, 16-year-old drug addict Jennifer and Joseph, was found with her torso bare but a brown towel draped carelessly across her chest. On that towel, experts found brown hair that belonged to a white man.
Jennifer is known to have dropped out of high school and moved to Spokane from Tacoma after her parents divorced. She began using methamphetamine and worked as a sex worker to pay for her fix. Witnesses told police they saw her get into a white sports car, believed to be a Chevrolet Corvette. The testimony wasn't complete, but it was the first real clue as to who might be driving. Police are now working to track down all the owners of white Corvettes in the area. Still, the string of murders continues. Women continue to disappear, and more bodies are being found. Some of the bodies, including Shannon's, were so badly decomposed that they had been lying there for months before being discovered by passersby or hunters. But they all had something in common, what forensic scientists call the killer's modus operandi: a single shot, a bag over his head, and a carelessly discarded body. Apparently, the maniac felt his impunity and superiority over the cops, as he acted more and more audaciously. For example, the body of one of the women was found just a few blocks from where she was last seen. This could indicate that either the killer was not at all afraid of being exposed, or he simply relaxed. This is a common story among serial killers. Sooner or later, the feeling of impunity relaxes them, and then they make a mistake that burns them. It is quite normal that most people assumed that the killer was definitely some kind of marginal. Well, some crazy person or someone from the local criminal circles, a pimp or a drug addict. Some even said that it was, perhaps, a cop or a taxi driver. But in reality, the serial killer is always the one you least suspect. The police were not sitting idly by. They knew that the killer was hunting on Spratt Street, an area where local sex workers worked. To narrow down the number of suspects, detectives organized surveillance of the area. Cops hid in inconspicuous cars, monitored video surveillance, and wrote down license plate numbers of cars that stopped near the girls. All this in the hope that one day this list would yield results. They also actively interviewed witnesses, including other sex workers who had been with the victims when they disappeared. And that's when the repeating details began to emerge. Several of the women who had last seen their friends mentioned the same car, a white Chevrolet Corvette. This sports car was memorable because there weren't many of those in town. One woman said,
My friend got into the white Corvette, and I never saw her again.
Another described the driver as a calm, middle-aged man. In August 1997, after Jennifer Joseph was murdered, the first time a white Corvette similar to the one Jennifer had been in was stopped by patrol officers. Robert Yates was driving. He said he had owned the car since '94. He showed the papers. Nothing suspicious. That was the first time his name appeared in police records, but as the driver of a white Camaro because the officer had mistaken the make of the car. After that, he was seen by the police several more times. He was seen in the areas where the bodies were found. In November 1998, he was even stopped while he was driving a sex worker to the Spokane River area. When questioned by the officer, he said that she was his friend's daughter and he just wanted to drop her off at home. So Yates was released again, although the officer did not believe him and recorded this in his notebook just in case. The investigation continued, however. The serial killer was being sought. Around the same time, in August 1998, a woman named Christine Smith contacted the police. She reported that during sex with a client, he hit her on the head and robbed her. She managed to escape from his car, but not a Camaro, but a black van with yellow stripes, wood trim, and a bed inside. Christine described the attacker as about 50 years old, blonde hair, of average height. The woman told the police that that night in 1998, when she got into the black van, she jokingly asked the driver, "You're not the one who kills everyone, are you?" To which the man calmly replied, "What kind of murderer am I? I have 5 children. What are you talking about?" Then the police registered the case as an ordinary robbery with violence. But during the medical examination, bullet fragments were found in Christine's hair. She had been shot in the head, but she didn't realize it, thinking she had just been hit. After that, it became clear that it was not a robbery, but an attempted murder. And this was our client. In March 1999, he reappeared on the same street, trying to pick up another prostitute, but she didn't get into his car. Nevertheless, he was noticed by the cops who were conducting surveillance. They recorded every potential client. Several alarm bells were already indicating the guy. In September of that year, the police summoned him for questioning. They offered to give a DNA sample to make sure he was no good and to remove him from the list of suspects. But Yates flatly refused. He said it was a humiliation, that he was a respectable man, a father of 5 children, and had no intention of submitting to such groundless checks. We've heard that somewhere before, haven't we? Well, about 5 children. He also told the cops that he no longer had a white Corvette, he had sold it. The irony is that the words about 5 children actually convinced the cops. They literally drove to his house, looked around and thought, hoo-hoo, this is definitely not the killer. But the lists of suspects don't agree with that. There were 3 main lists: owners of white Corvettes, men who used prostitutes, and men who had been seen in the area where the murders had taken place. There were thousands of potential suspects, so they developed software that could identify people who were on all 3 lists. Yates was one of them. He had a white Corvette. He had been seen with prostitutes, even in a white Corvette. However, he tried again to film a prostitute on the same street, although unsuccessfully. The only surviving woman's testimony about 5 children coincided with Yates' words, and that was also a coincidence. But that wasn't enough. Direct evidence was needed. We had to find that white Chevrolet Corvette. In January 2000, the police managed to find the new owner of the same Corvette that had previously belonged to Yates. The car was examined and several pieces of evidence were found at once. A mother of pearl button, the same as on Jennifer Joseph's jacket, lint that matched her clothes, and most importantly, blood stains. After DNA testing, there was no doubt it was Jennifer's blood. Now the police had not just a suspect, but direct evidence. On April 18, 2000, the Spokane police officially arrested Robert Lee Yates. The basis was the results of the examination after examining his former Corvette. The button, lint, blood stains. After the arrest, a blood sample was taken from Yates to compare with the DNA found on the bodies of the victims. And here there was no option but to refuse. According to the results of the examination, the DNA of at least 9 women was found on the bodies of Yates, this father of many children. The total number of victims is shocking. The most intense period was from August 1997 to July 1998. During this time, he killed 7 women and injured 1. In December alone, 4 were killed. In total, he was suspected of killing 13 women and 1 attempted murder between 1988 and 1998. But that's not all the victims. Christine Smith, the same woman who survived the shooting, saw a photo in the newspaper. It was of a man who had just been arrested for serial murder. She recognized him. He was her attacker. Christine Smith is the only known woman to survive the attack by Robert Lee Yates and identify him. And his family couldn't believe it. His wife, Linda, and children came to his defense, saying it was a mistake. The daughters cried in court, unable to understand how their father could do such a thing. Neighbors recalled that Robert often worked night shifts, so he was often absent from home at night. No one suspected anything sinister, but the whole truth was revealed when it turned out that right under the nose of the Yates family, in their yard, the body of a missing woman was buried. It was 43-year-old Melody Murphy, who disappeared in 1988. For all these 2.5 years, her remains lay under a flower bed literally under the family's bedroom window until the very exhumation in 2000. How did this man turn out to be a serial killer? What drove him? What was the motive? To understand this at least a little, you need to look into the biography of Robert Yates, and there are many interesting things that are revealed there. For example, previous murders. He was born in 1952 in Washington State into a fairly well-off middle-class family. His parents were religious people, regularly attended church, and taught their son to work and be disciplined. Robert sang in the school choir, played baseball, and went hunting and fishing. Friends remember him as a quiet, even shy boy far from the life and soul of the company, but not a recluse either. An interesting detail: there was a murder in the Yates family before he was born. His grandmother hacked his grandfather to death with an axe. It is unlikely that this had any effect on Robert, but the fact is interesting and worth mentioning. In the 1970s, Yates married again to a woman named Linda, who would later become the mother of his 5 children. This would be his family at the time of the series of murders. He earned his living by working for a while as a prison guard at the Walla Walla prison. It was in this city that the first mysterious murders occurred in 1975. A young couple, a 21-year-old man and a 22-year-old woman, were shot during a picnic by a local stream. They were Patrick Oliver and Susan Sevok. Their bodies were found the next day in the bushes. The killer was never found, and the case remained unsolved for 25 years until Robert himself confessed after his arrest. He was only 23 years old at the time. Thus, the number of victims increased to 15 dead and 1 injured. He confessed to this double murder solely for the sake of a favorable deal with the investigation. He did not name any adequate motive. He said that he thought the couple wanted to steal something, so he stopped the theft by shooting them with a rifle. Then he buried the bodies in a shallow grave under the bushes. This was not self-defense, it was unjustified aggression. It seems that he just wanted to kill. 2 years later, Yates joined the US Armed Forces. He trained as a pilot, learned to fly helicopters and airplanes. He served in the army for almost 20 years, rose to the rank of warrant officer, received several awards. In the 80s, he served in Germany, and later in hotspots, in particular in peacekeeping operations in Somalia 1993 and Haiti 1994. For his exemplary service, he was awarded the honorary title of Master Aviator of the United States Army. Friends and neighbors knew him as a responsible military man with an impeccable reputation. He did not drink, did not conflict, was strictly disciplined, but at the same time soft on his family. The ideal father raised 4 daughters and 1 son, took pictures with them against the background of the American flag, attended church, paid a lot of attention to his children. In 1996, Robert Yates retired from active duty. He was 44 years old. He settled with his family in Spokane, worked at an aluminum plant, and also served in the National Guard as a reserve pilot. In the United States, such service involves a normal civilian life with periodic military training. It would seem that this is the quiet life of a veteran: work, home, family. But all this was just a mask, because at night he could attack a random prostitute, shoot her, pull a bag over his head and throw the body in the trash, and in the morning play with the children on the playground, go to church with his family. Something. But serial killers really know how to manage time. Yates disappeared more and more often at night. As we already know, he regularly went to East Break Street, the local red light district. There he made acquaintances with prostitutes, bought and used drugs with them, took girls into his van or car, where sexual intercourse took place. Sometimes it ended in murder right in the process. Well, his kind of happening happened posthumously, so to speak. And this, my dear friends, is necrophilia. Then this guy put on his social mask and drove to his wife and children. The darkness only intensified. Did his wife notice anything suspicious? One day, Robert came back late and started washing the trunk of his car to remove brown stains. He said that he had hit a dog and was taking it to the vet, but the dog died and blood was spilled all over the car. His daughter once came across a mysterious notebook with women's names and phone numbers. The father brushed it off, saying it was a list of auto parts he was selling. These details began to be perceived by his family as alarm bells only after the fact, when everything came to light. And you must admit, this is understandable. Who would suspect a loving father and husband of being a serial killer? There was also the fact that Yates began to change and show aggression at home. It literally came to violence. He would lose his temper for no apparent reason, which was completely unlike him. In 1998, his older daughters complained to the police about their father because he had beaten them. Yates was even arrested for domestic violence, but he apologized and promised not to touch the girls again. After that, the case was closed. By the way, a lot of information about him was told by his own children and wife. This is the first time I have seen relatives of a serial killer communicate so openly with the media. Usually, it is the other way around. At the time of the start of the confirmed series of murders, Yates was 44 years old. This is if you count the first 2 cases from 1996. But, according to FBI experts, it is very doubtful that a serial killer suddenly began his career at 44. That is, it is logical to assume that before 1996, Robert Yates could also kill just somewhere else. After his arrest, investigators and journalists began to literally dig up every episode of his life. The main question: how many people did he actually kill? The FBI joined the global investigation. Agents traced Yates' work routes and searched for similar unsolved crimes across the states and even abroad. Generally, people don't wake up one day thinking, I think I'm going to be a serial killer. This is behavior that develops from childhood. It's hard to disagree. It's unlikely that Yates didn't commit murders in his 30s or even 22nd, especially knowing about the 1975 case. It's just that he did it more carefully or in conditions where bodies were lost and cases remained unsolved. The picture was eerie. It turned out that while Robert was serving abroad, there were also a series of unsolved murders in those regions. For example, in Germany in the 80s and 90s, 26 murders of women remained unsolved. Just think about it, coinciding with the period of Yates' service at the American base in that country. In the states of New York and Alabama, near the Fort Drum and Fort Rucker bases, where Yates was trained, mysterious murders were also recorded. And again, at the very time when he was there, I found this information in the Washington Post. Moreover, even the Canadian police became interested. In Vancouver in the 90s, 31 women disappeared or were murdered, mostly prostitutes. Perhaps some of them were victims of a touring killer who came from the USA. Later, it turned out that many of them were killed by Robert Picton, the same one who fed women to his pigs. If you are interested, let me know in the comments. I will make a video about him. But it is possible that Yates inherited there. Imagine the scale. Dozens of murders of women around the world which could be connected to one person. According to some police officers and journalists who analyzed the movements of Robert Yates and compared them with the corresponding crimes, this man, the father of 4 girls and 1 boy, took the lives of at least 41 women and 1 man. In total, he left behind 42 bodies. Yes, he may have killed far fewer or, on the contrary, far more. This is just a hypothesis. Given his rhythm, I agree that he probably didn't start killing serially until 1988, at the age of 44. There were definitely more than 16 victims. That's how many were proven in court. We'll never know for sure, because Yates himself never confessed to any additional murders. After his arrest, he only confessed to the episodes for which he was formally charged. All other suspicions are just versions of the police and investigators. Nevertheless, all traces were carefully checked. DNA, bullets, handwriting from crimes in different states were compared. However, no new charges were ever brought, except for the 16 in Washington. So, officially, Robert Yates is guilty of 16 confirmed murders. Although one of these 16 survived, an attempt is also considered murder. That's why I generalized. After Robert Yates was arrested, a long legal battle awaited him. Society demanded justice and the death penalty. Yates himself initially stubbornly refused to admit guilt. At the first hearing in May 2000, he declared through his lawyer that he was not guilty. But due to direct evidence, the defense strategy changed. To save his skin, Yates took a plea deal. In October 2000, he confessed to 13 murders and 1 attempted murder committed in Spokane and the surrounding area. He also confessed to a double murder that occurred back in 1975, a kind of bonus for certainty. In exchange, prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty for these episodes. The court sentenced Yates to 408 years in prison. After the verdict, he made a public statement in which he apologized to the families of those he killed. Here is what it said. I took your loved ones from you. I caused you grief and despair. In the struggle with the shame of what I did, I turned to God. I pray that God will replace your pain with hope. He was thanked for this and sent to hell, calling him a sick monster. I will not judge him for this. Here is the fact. But the story didn't end there. There was another trial ahead in neighboring Pierce County, where 2 more women were found murdered in 1997 and 1998, Melinda Mercer and Connie Ellis. The evidence pointed to Yates. Under state law, murder committed with special cruelty or under aggravating circumstances can be punishable by death. The Pierce County Prosecutor's Office put a stop to his plea bargain with the Spokane Prosecutor's Office and insisted on the death penalty. It was a different county, so his plea deal didn't apply here. Yates was sent to trial again, this time without any plea bargains. In October 2002, a jury found Robert Yates guilty of 2 murders in Pierce County and sentenced him to the maximum penalty of death by lethal injection. He was transferred to death row at the state prison. However, the sentence was never carried out due to numerous appeals filed by his lawyers. He managed to stay out for 18 years, until 2018, when the death penalty was declared unconstitutional and all death sentences were overturned. At that time, they were replaced with life sentences. At the time of this video, he is 73 years old and still alive. Robert Lee Yates is incarcerated in the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, the same city where he committed his first known murder. To this day, he is appealing his convictions. So far, to no avail. His children and ex-wife have changed their last names. We don't know for sure how many lives this seemingly perfect father has taken. Officially, there are 16 confirmed victims, but there is a feeling that there were more, perhaps many more. The truth is buried with those he killed. He never revealed his full motives why he did it, and for how long. I am 100% certain that these were sexually motivated murders with a paraphilia when a person is aroused by pain, control, and death. As I said, he shot during a sexual act that didn't end with the victim's death, but continued until the killer's happy ending. That's the story, kids. Thanks for watching. Take care.